Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Big Future. We have a very special show because we have CERN Basher, who's been the expert who's done all the deep dives on Robotaxi as well as Optimus, very detailed models. And he's been on many other shows, and it's been too long since we've done shows together. I think only on some group shows with some of the other YouTubers. So I've discovered that the Robotrucking aspect of where you get the semi fully automated without a driver, that's kind of been ignored, and in a very large opportunity, I think as large or even larger than Robotaxi in some ways, depending how things play out. And CERN has also improved the slides I've done with more of his fantastic research. So we'll go into a deck with about 18 slides that will go over a lot of this. But this is a very rich topic that we will have to look at in more detail because it is as important as Robotaxi. Anything you want to discuss before we get going there, CERN?
No, it's just good to be here, Brian. It has been long overdue since you and I have done a show together, and I think this robo trucking opportunity is really quite interesting. And thank you for your work on that yesterday. And it was relatively easy for me to take my robo taxi work, the
Mhm.
models that I've built, and sort of reincorporate it for robo trucking.
Right.
But there are some very interesting differences that we'll get into today.
Wonderful. Okay, let's get into the slides and then we'll discuss it as we go. So view slideshow. Okay, so as I said, I did some initial work on it, and then CERN has improved the slides. Oops, it's already starting to um, pause here. Oops, go back one. Okay, so you have analyzed the different products that Tesla has over the next 5 years. Why don't you walk us through what we're discussing here?
Yeah, so we're seeing two slides here on the screen at once, but the slide on the left is kind of a little chart that I put together and added to over time that sort of shows, at least stylistically, what the potential profit is of each of some Tesla's various products and services. So I'll
Mhm.
just kind of walk you through this real quick.
Sure.
Right now Tesla sells cars, the auto division, and let's say they sell a car for, $40,000. The profit on that might be the net profit on that might be about $4,000, give or take.
Mhm.
And if they sell a vehicle to somebody every 5 years, then there's a $4,000 profit over a 5-year period to that customer. Okay.
Mhm.
If we look at the semi, if they just sell a semi and let's say, and we don't know the price yet, but let's say they sell a semi to a customer for 300,000, um, the and if the semi has a 900 kilowatt hour battery pack,
Mhm.
that's essentially equivalent to 0.08 vehicles
Mhm.
in terms of vehicle equivalence.
Mhm.
So the profit then on a semi over a 5-year period is about 10x that of a car.
Mhm.
But I'm sorry, in vehicle equivalence, it's a little bit less than a vehicle.
Right.
It's 10x if you don't take into account the battery pack, but a little bit less if you just take into account the battery pack size.
Right.
And then we get into autos with supervised FSD, and basically by doing that, you can double your profit.
Mhm.
So it's about a 2x increase there. Energy, it's about a 2.5x over just selling a car, adjusting for the battery size. And then we get into the sort of the AI powered businesses that suddenly get really interesting.
Mhm.
So this robo trucking line is new on this chart. And again, just roughly, we'll go into the details here in a minute, but roughly, and I adjusted on this line for a 750 kilowatt hour battery pack, which I think is probably more likely.
Mhm.
You're looking at recurring revenue of perhaps $800,000 a year and
Mhm.
profit over a 5-year period of close to 2 million.
Mhm.
So that's 48 times, again, adjusting for the battery equivalence, vehicle equivalence, about 48 times selling a car.
Mhm. Right.
And then, of course, as we've discussed before many times, the attractiveness of Robotaxi is like 78 times selling a car, and then Optimus is off the charts.
Right.
So these three businesses here are extremely interesting.
Mhm.
And they all, by the way, they all sort of benefit from each other. as well
Mhm.
as energy. So it becomes part of a pretty powerful ecosystem.
So the 5-year profit estimate, you're looking at the costs and also some kind of revenue sharing or profit sharing between Tesla and the partner company that they're working with, like a Pepsi or a FedEx or that kind of thing.
You
That's
know,
pretty good.
in all these examples, Brian, I'm assuming that Tesla has its own company-owned vehicles. So in the Robotrucking example here, I'm not including fleet partners.
Okay.
Now that could certainly work as well. That would be like an asset-light business where
hmm
Pepsi, for example, owns the trucks,
hmm
and then essentially Tesla shares, some of the Robo trucking revenue with Pepsi,
hmm
where they share in the cost savings, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is this example of Tesla had its own fleet and got into the trucking business.
hmm Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And currently that is the dominant way that they're doing things because they probably have a few hundred, possibly 1,000 semis that they're using themselves currently.
Hmm.
To move things around. And then you have the assumptions on the right around vehicle battery life, average speed, because trucks tend to go at about 50 miles per hour, and the utilization rate, which I think you're going to go into more detail,
Hmm.
cost per mile. So this is something that some people may not know is that there's very detailed models and tracking of the what they call gross revenue per mile that trucks can get because this is a lot of independent operators that need to know what these rates are, and then there's spot versus contract, and a few different kinds of vehicles. But this 220 number is actually very precise, and there's I won't go into, but there's various sites that go into what the regional differences are on these costs per mile.
Yeah, I found a report for last year, and the national average apparently was about 226. So
Right.
it's in that range. It's it's come up quite a bit actually over recent years.
Yeah, and this is something that is actually a a season. There's seasonality to it. There's
Yeah,
various other things based on how these shipments are moving. And
that's
then it's there's also boom and bust. The truck guys call it the cycle. Like when things went really good and went really down, as the spot fluctuates up and down with wilder swings against the contract rates.
yeah. The
Yeah,
trucking industry has some interesting challenges, right? Because the fuel costs can be a pretty wild swing.
right,
So even just switching to electric right there, I think would really greatly help the industry manage itself a little bit better. It doesn't have to deal with some of the bigger swings in their costs.
right. Anything
Yeah.
else you want to talk about these costs, tires, insurance, anything, or want to just
Yeah, I
move?
think those are pretty straightforward. I mean,
Yeah.
the trucking tires, I've seen estimates last 75,000 to 125,000 miles. I put 100,000 in there. I'm looking at the cost of 10 tires. So this is just the cab, not including the trailer. It was another eight
Mhm.
tires on the trailer. I'm
Mhm.
assuming that Tesla uses, trailers that are owned by others. And just basically the cab moves around, picks up a trailer, drops it off, goes and gets the next one.
Mhm.
Um, I have insurance, maintenance, and other costs at 42,000. That's a pretty big number.
Mhm.
And then I'm also, because I'm looking at net profit, I'm also factoring in SG&A and R&D costs.
Mhm.
And in my model, that comes out to about 50 to $60,000. So again,
Mhm.
pretty healthy estimates here for all kinds of costs.
Right.
So if you don't see a cost listed specifically in my model, I've got some catch-all buckets here that are pretty large.
Mhm. Right.
That would include that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this
So as you
is,
pointed out in your piece
yeah,
yesterday, Brian, robo trucks should be able to operate at much higher utilization than a robotaxi,
right.
right? And just to show you there, if it's operating at 35%, that's 8.4 hours a day,
hmm
right? But
hmm
robo trucks, if they're not driven by a human driver, you don't have the restrictions that human drivers have, right? And so you
And
could operate 19, 20, maybe even 22 hours a day.
right.
So you're looking at 80 to 90% utilization rates.
Right. And we've seen that currently because they have something called team drivers, where perhaps two people are in a truck, one
Mhm.
driving, one sleeping, and then the next person takes the shift, and they can get up to that 16, 18 hours of driving. And I think also Pepsi had it where We have regional tr driving where you're only driving around from depot to depot, doing shorter runs, and there you can switch off the drivers. So if I want to keep using the vehicle, I can again have
Yeah.
three shifts on the drivers if I want.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting here. Let's just talk about a couple of things I think that make Robotrucking different from Robotaxi. So for Robotaxi, on a fleet-wide basis, you actually want to build some slack and capacity in the system so that wait times aren't too crazy.
Hmm.
So you might be operating more in that 35 to 55% range on the left side of the curve. For Robotrucking, you can operate on the right side of the curve. So
Hmm.
that makes it quite different from Robotaxi.
Hmm.
Robotrucking, you don't have to worry about wait times because people aren't just instantly trying to get, service. They're going to schedule it.
Right.
Right. For the most part, there's a spot market for service that's rush and so on. So that's a little bit different. But in
Hmm.
general, people that are using trucks and shipping things generally know what their schedules are.
Right.
That makes it very different from Robotaxi. The other thing I think that you pointed out yesterday, which is really important, is that robo trucking is just competing against commercial trucking,
Hmm.
whereas robotaxi is competing against ride hail, it's competing against rental cars, it's competing against personally owned vehicles. There's a
Hmm.
whole sort of declining cost curve of cost per mile
Hmm.
on the robotaxi side, but as you pointed out on the robo trucking side, you're just competing against commercials. So that 220 a mile average is
Hmm.
what you're competing against,
Hmm. Right.
right? And that makes it, I think, for a very different market dynamic.
Right. Right. And I think that, yeah, it's very important because many of the models that you've had to do for Robo Taxi have assumed that once we get to really high volumes, that you've changed over from competing with taxis and Uber to personal driving, and then that really drops the rates. While here, the rates stay the same throughout.
Yep,
Although there's differences in countries and regions,
sure.
which we won't get into as much here, but it's the actual rates tend to be actually pretty stable across different countries and regions. The mix of shorter run is more in smaller countries and in Europe. And then also things that are more chaotic in terms of the loads in China because of fewer you're doing a lot more not full loads, a lot more delivery to smaller customers between smaller things, so which makes it more different. So we can move on here to the Robo trucking miles per day. You
Yeah,
want
and
to
this is
discuss about it?
pretty amazing what you can consider if you look at the right side of the curve, the 80 to 90% utilization rates, you're looking at, 1,000 miles a day, around a
Hmm.
thousand miles a day potentially if the vehicle average is 50 miles an hour.
Right.
Right. So the amount of miles that you can do at that 220 rate
Mhm.
suddenly starts to accrue a lot of revenue.
And this was shown in some real world usage and tests.
Hmm.
So there's something called the Run on Less event every 2 years, one coming up in September, where Pepsi goes in with their Tesla truck and just basically provides tracking and data to the monitors. And 2 years ago, they got as high as 1,000 miles in a day, and they got 800 miles over 2 days, so 1,600 miles over 48 hours. So these levels have been proven and are actually getting better
That's
for the
right.
Tesla vehicle.
Yep.
The other thing was um, for a typical robotaxi, in comparison for the miles per day, it's what about 20 to 25 rides at about 5 miles each is a typical run rate for the vehicles.
Yeah, yeah. It certainly will be highly variable, but I think that's in the ballpark,
Yeah.
right? And so the number of miles that you can get on a robotaxi is far less.
Mhm.
You're looking, if you're lucky, 300 to 400 miles a day.
Mhm. Right.
Right. So you're probably getting about three times the mileage on a daily basis from the truck than you are from a robotaxi, roughly.
Right. Okay. And that contributes to the profitability of it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Next.
So the next chart there on the left is the revenue at the different utilization rates. And again, if we're focused on that 80 to 90%, you're looking at 770,000 on up to about 870,000 in annual revenue.
Mhm.
Now, this assumes that the truck is operating basically every day. That's probably not correct. So you could back these numbers off maybe a little bit.
Mhm.
but I think we're in the ballpark here.
Yeah, and then even at the very conservative level, the 55 to 65%, you're still looking at 500 to $600,000
Yeah.
per year. Just amazing numbers. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they're pretty staggering, aren't they, in terms of revenue per vehicle? It's pretty amazing, particularly if you can make the truck for, let's say, $150,000.
Mhm.
Cost to Tesla to make it, put it in service, and it's generating revenue of, 750,000 is incredible.
Right. Um, and then the right, you have the costs per mile.
Yeah, we'll get into the details a little bit more, but this chart shows the revenue per mile in blue there at 220, and then the cost at the different utilization rates. And so as the utilization goes up, the cost per mile comes down.
Mhm.
I think the numbers you were talking about yesterday, you had in the 30 cent range or
Right.
mid 30s.
Yeah.
I can get down to about 40 cents with the model that I have and the assumptions that I have.
Hmm.
Again, I think I'm being pretty conservative with many of the assumptions.
Right.
So I think we're in the ballpark in terms of where
Right.
the cost per mile could be for this type of service.
Hmm. I think that the main sensitivity on this is the amount of miles per day that you're doing, or per year, where you're basically amortizing over
Yeah.
more paid miles. That really affects that number. Um, and I probably was overly aggressive on things like um, the energy, electricity efficiency, kilowatt hours per mile, and maintenance. So those are some numbers that can substantially impact it. The main ones, buckets being you get rid of the driver, that's about 70 cents per mile. And then you get rid of do a lot better maintenance, that's about another, can be as high as 30 cents, and then you can take it down to a dime or 15 or whatever it's going to be. And then the fuel cost, which on a regular diesel is around 40 cents per mile or more, depending on the
Yeah.
fuel price at the time.
Yeah.
And then electricity can bring that down to the 10 to 15 cent range. So it's moving those big numbers and buckets as opposed to, is it 41 cents? Is it 45 cents? Is it 35? It's not really as relevant. Yeah.
It was interesting, Brian. When I looked at it, I'm just going to pull up my model here and reference it. Um, when I compared a diesel truck driven by a human operator versus a robo truck,
Mhm.
you can actually get about 4 times the utilization of a robo
Mhm.
truck
Mhm.
versus a human-driven truck. Again, not including the 10, team-driven, just a single operator,
Right.
given the driving restrictions that people have. So about 4 times the utilization and at about 80% of the dollar cost,
Mhm.
right? On a
Right.
cost per mile, it's only about 20% on a cost per mile basis. But because you're getting 4x the utilization, it's 80% of the total cost. It's pretty phenomenal in terms of the potential cost savings here. It's enormous.
Right. Okay. Go on to the next slide here. So gross
Yeah, so this
profit.
one then is just the difference between the previous two bars, the gross profit per mile. So you can see that it goes up.
Mhm.
But even at low utilizations, the gross profit per mile is still very attractive.
Mhm. Right.
You're not earning as much dollars, but from a, profit perspective, it's still very good. And
Mhm.
then on the right side there, I'm calculating net profit and net margin. So not looking at gross anymore. We're looking at net. This factors in taxes, it factors in SG&A and R&D,
Mhm.
and so on. And if you recall in my assumptions, I had a very healthy number for that.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at net profit margins of Robotrucking in the mid 40s to 50% range.
Right. And that's something that I didn't look at all in terms of the obvious thing of taxes and and the various things around overhead and finances that
Yeah.
yeah, didn't look at in detail.
And
Right.
I've got I think I had a 25% tax rate built in. So I mean it's pretty healthy numbers for operating costs and taxes. So you're looking at the lowest utilization, 35%, a profit per year per truck of $150,000. So it pays for itself in 1 year,
Right.
right? At
And
the worst
and
case scenario.
right. And the net margin stabilizes pretty quickly in that 48 to
Yeah,
50% range.
that's right.
So it's very insensitive to not maximizing the numbers.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
yeah.
interesting because most of the cost for trucking, aside from the truck itself, it's highly variable, right? The tires are dependent on the miles you drive, the
Mhm.
charging costs depend on the miles you drive, et cetera. So most of the big costs are variable.
Mhm.
And so, yes, as you point out, the margins really stabilize at fairly early rate, just fairly early on in terms of the utilization.
Right. And then
Um,
things like return on capital or months to get your money back, it's less than a year, well less than a year. If you're
yeah,
at 150,000, even $200,000 for the cost of the vehicle, you get your money back. Tesla gets money back in that first year within like 9 months, as fast as six, or in the optimal case of 400,000, you get it back within like 4 months or something like that.
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, right.
Right. And similar kind of numbers for Robotaxi. They get the payback very quickly. So there's a heavy incentive for Tesla to have its own fleet because the economics are just so staggeringly good.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're in that 80 to 90% utilization, you can see your net profit of 380 to 430,000 a year.
Mhm.
That is an incredible opportunity. There's very few businesses that have that kind of
Mhm.
profit
Yeah.
per vehicle at the scale that this could be. So it makes it for to be very interesting for Tesla to pursue this.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, the when I compared human-driven, before we go over these charts, but when I
Yeah.
compared human-driven trucks versus robo-trucking,
Yeah.
if you take out the driver, which for a human-driven truck, if you take out wages and benefits,
Mhm.
that's about $1 per mile.
Mhm. Right.
So right there, that drops to Tesla's bottom line as gross profit,
Mhm.
right? And what was interesting is when I looked at the fuel cost for a human-driven truck that drives 82,500 miles a year versus a robo truck and its charging costs of 300, if it drove 328,500 miles a year,
Mhm.
right? So a 4x increase in utilization. The charging cost actually wasn't much more than the fuel cost, even though it was going 4 times as far,
Yes. Okay.
right? So a huge advantage on that perspective.
Right.
Even if there's no other advantages, the charging cost advantage, the drive taking the driver out just yields such a massive advantage for robo trucking
Mhm.
versus human-driven diesel trucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me get back to these slides. Okay.
So what I did with these two charts, Brian, is compare my numbers from my Robotaxi versus
Hmm.
this robo trucking model.
Hmm.
And I don't yet see the charts on my
Oh,
screen. I'm not
sorry. Let me try this again. Share. Okay. There we go.
There we go. So we've got robo trucking on the left,
Hmm.
got Robotaxi on the right.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of numbers on this page. If we look at sort of the line that says annual net income at a given fleet size, AV fleet size, autonomous
Hmm.
vehicle fleet size.
Yep.
So let's just say that there is 50,000 robo trucks. Okay. And
Hmm.
let's look at that 80% utilization column. So it's the third from the right there. Yeah. So 19, you're looking at 19 um, billion dollars in profit. Okay. And if you drop down then to the next section, basically I'm taking, what would the market cap be at P multiple of 40? Right. So you're looking at $763 billion, almost $1 trillion market value on a fleet of just 50,000 trucks.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And then we can look at the robotaxi side of the equation and say, okay, how big does the robotaxi fleet need to be to get to a 750 to $1 trillion market value?
Hmm.
Right. And again, we're not looking at utilization at 80% for robotaxi. We're going to look at more on the left side of the table
Hmm.
at utilizations between 35 and 55%. Let's just look at the 55% one just to make it clean. So in order to get to, you know, a similar valuation, you need about 500,000 robotaxis. And as you pointed out, it's about 10x difference.
Right.
50,000 trucks is roughly equal to about 500,000 robotaxis in terms of profitability.
Hmm. Right. And the 50,000 per year is the capacity of the factory that's being built now.
Yeah. So
So,
if they took that entire capacity,
mhm.
put them all into robotrucking, you're generating $760 billion of value every year in market value.
Right. And okay.
Okay. And then I did another scenario, scenario two here on the left, and you can see instead of a truck lasting 1.5 million miles, it lasts only a million miles.
Hmm.
Instead of driving at an average of 50, you're driving at 25, so maybe more kind of in city kind of
Hmm.
activity,
Yeah.
right? I've got the cost per mile at $3. It's going to be a little bit higher because you can't get as many miles.
Hmm.
And I've looked at the smaller version of the semi, the 450 kilowatt hour battery pack with a range of about 300 miles.
Hmm.
Okay. And everything else is essentially the same. So you're doing about half the miles. You're
Right.
about 500 miles a day. Okay.
Hmm.
And then from on the next page, you can see the revenue um, gets you to about 500 to $600,000 a year
Hmm.
um, in revenue on the next
That's
screen.
the next page. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then you can see the chart on the right, the revenue per mile, cost per mile. So $3 a mile. And then the cost, I get down to about mid 50s.
Hmm.
If you recall, in the previous one, I think we were in the low 40s. And on
Hmm.
this one, we're in the mid 50s. So a little bit higher costs
Hmm.
and a little bit lower revenue. But the gross profit per mile on the next page
Hmm.
is above $2. Uh,
Hmm.
and at higher utilizations reaches about $2.50.
Let's go to the next slide.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So that's still pretty attractive.
Hmm.
And then from a net profit, net margin perspective on the right, I get again a very similar profile in terms of net margins.
Hmm.
The net profit per vehicle is certainly lower than the previous example, where we
Hmm.
had profits of 400 to 430,000. This one we're looking at 260 to about 300. Again,
Hmm.
still very, very attractive.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Next slide.
And then finally, just to finish that off, the chart, a similar chart, looking at
Mm-hmm.
scale. So with a fleet of 50,000, you're looking at about at 80% utilization, about 13 billion in profit, and that would be a market cap of about 500 billion
Right.
if the PE
And
was 40.
and then if you get up to 500,000, which would be about um, 10 years of full production of one factory,
Yeah.
looking at 130 um,
130 billion in annual net profit
in a profit,
and 5.2 trillion in
right?
market value.
Which would be about take it up to five, six times the current market valuation.
Yeah.
That if you could achieve that, and it seems um, relatively straightforward to do that scaling, and they would probably make another factory in Europe, and then another two or three in Asia. Asia actually has more trucks, but they have less utilization, so it's overall potentially four times,
Yeah.
easily four times larger than just the United States. We've been going
And even
global.
just in the US, my understanding is between 3 and 4 million, semi trucks in the market. So
Right.
they've got ample opportunity to grow. So let's say they got to a million, right?
Hmm.
You're looking at $260 billion a year in annual profit, and
Hmm.
that's a $10 trillion market value just on Robotrucking.
Right. So in terms of the comparison between robotaxi and robotrucking, the fact that you're going from those doubling the utilization rates up from 40% up to 80, and then those extra miles and usage of the vehicle can take away a lot of costs. Like even if your costs on the vehicle somehow were higher, then it is pretty irrelevant to the fact that you still want to make those vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, Brian. There's opportunity beyond obviously the existing trucking market. There's rail.
Hmm.
My understanding is trucking in the US is between 800 and maybe a 800 billion and $1 trillion business a year in the US.
Right.
See numbers in both ranges. And rail is about 300, 350 billion.
Hmm.
So it's a significant opportunity. So if
Hmm.
you drive down the cost per mile, perhaps down to $1 a mile,
Hmm.
you can start taking probably decent share away from rail.
Right. Right.
Right. So that's also an interesting opportunity. Um,
And
and then of course,
there's something called platooning, where you can um, take the drag behind another vehicle, so one lead truck, and then
yeah,
other truck, just like a virtual train, and then you can get more efficiency out of the trucks in behind, which because electricity costs so low, is not you're getting some lower electricity costs, but I think it's the fact that you can increase your range. So I can go from like 500 miles to maybe 700 miles of range before I needed to run out of charge if I have a platoon of vehicles going. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking for the charts from the trucking when they introduced the semi. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I can't quite place my finger on it, but there was actually quite a significant cost savings by using that strategy.
I think about 30% is typical. But
Yeah,
that depends on speed of driving, with other things. And then they've improved the aerodynamics so much that also impacts things.
yeah. Here it is. Here the chart. So at the time, the cost per mile was $1.51 for
Mhm.
a diesel truck, and now we're at 220, 226.
Mhm.
And Elon was saying that the Tesla Semi, human-driven Semi, was a dollar got down to $1.26 mile.
Mhm. Right.
And then you add the three truck convoy, and that got you down to 85 cents.
Right. Wow.
So about
Another 4 cents less. Yeah.
40 cents a mile less. And as you say, about a third cost savings.
Even
So that's
without the taking out the driver. So it's already taking probably helping with fuel efficiency, maintenance, like many other things, and then
yeah,
also operations, just making more efficient operations.
right. Yeah, you've got one driver instead of three.
Hmm.
Now I guess the question is, can you do a four truck or a five truck convoy?
Hmm. Right.
So there could be further savings in some situations.
Hmm.
Imagine if you're driving across the country at night, then you could probably string, five or six of these together.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something more common in Australia where they
Yeah.
do the physical connection, having three or four um, pulled together, which gives you the same effects. But then instead of having something that's like 150, 200 feet long, which would be very difficult to merge into. Like I have to wait like for this thing to go by. And I think there's other dangers with that on the highway that having something that's dynamically able to open up like efficiencies most of the time, but then open up the gap if someone needs to get off the off ramp, right?
Right.
So yeah,
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
So the one thing too, it's interesting to think about is I think of Robotaxi as being a platform opportunity,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Certainly moving people and earning revenue to move people around is nice and it's huge.
Yeah.
But also we have the opportunity with Robotaxi for deliveries,
Hmm.
food packages, etc.
Hmm.
There's also other opportunities to layer in terms of advertising revenue and different things, entertainment.
Hmm.
You could have the Robotaxi serve as a tour guide for people that are visiting a new city, right?
Hmm.
With Robotrucking, it's maybe not quite as much of a platform opportunity, although if you add Optimus to the equation,
Hmm.
suddenly you're talking about an autonomous logistics network.
Right.
And that probably increases the size of the opportunity by probably two or three times,
Hmm. Right.
maybe more.
Hmm.
So that gets very interesting at that point.
I think the other thing, which is something that'd be difficult to see in the platform, is kind of the mixture of Robovan in it,
Mm,
where you're moving things to people. I'm bringing a room to people. I'm bringing industrial power and other things to people. So,
yeah,
so then instead of me taking stuff to you, I'm well, I'm taking stuff to you, but I'm bringing something functional, kind of like the restaurant trucks that we have, where you have, but you can do more with it because you have power, industrial purposes, other equipment, that kind of things. So a whole business could go to people. Yeah. So
yeah, that's interesting too. And the thing I think about is, we know about Tesla's warehouse on wheels.
right.
Can you take that concept and expand that, nationally, right?
Right.
So instead of having warehouses all across the country that store stuff because you might order it,
Mhm.
you just kind of dynamically move stuff around.
Right. And then if you had that need for production, the Tesla bots would be able to do things. So
Yeah.
the kind of like I think building a lot of solar, building a lot of charging stations, there could be something where you're bringing in 50 or 100 trucks loaded with production equipment that would make because there's a lot of this supercharging networks, mega charging stuff is a replacement of 20% of our oil that we use for fueling our trucks.
Hmm.
that we need to make a lot of electricity. So doing things there could be Tesla solving its own problem of like, I need to bring construction, AI data center construction, mega charging station construction, a lot of solar, and bringing an army to one location and then moving it to the next location is something that uh, could be a very powerful platform.
Do you see the build out of the mega charging network to be a potential impediment to this in terms of the expansion of robotrucking?
It is ultimately an impediment. Like it is something that you need to build the infrastructure for. Um, Obviously, Tesla's the best place to do it. I did some looking into that. They have proposal to make about 49 mega charging things. They trying to get the government to chip in on that, in particular from California to Texas. They want that route with like 9 mega charging stations. Um, they also can adapt existing supercharging stations. Version 4 supercharging is highly compatible
Hmm.
with truck charging.
Hmm.
But then there's the issue that um, normally supercharging costs about 30 cents per kilowatt hour, something like that. So they would have to have some kind of like volume purchase agreement. They have to make some modifications. About 200 of the stalls have trailer pull-through locations. So then I have to like, if I have like 12 stalls, I take two and make them more adaptable to a truck to pull through and have it be able to pull in and out of the location easily. And then the amount of charging there could apply. Like those two chargers would be roughly equivalent to one mega charger. And you can also extension cord in another charger into it. So the timing would work out, but just the fact that you're giving up 15% or 10% of your location for this purpose, the partner needs to work at the economics of that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like speed of rollout, that would be quickly you could get a bunch of charging that's perfectly suitable for trucks. So I think in the range of and next year, if we're getting to 10,000, 50,000 trucks, the partners, Pepsi's already got 4 depots going. So you would make your own depots to do a lot of the charging and do regional. So we don't have to go anywhere else. So if the first 10,000, 20,000 would just be regional charging, and Tesla would work with them on their specific location to make it all work. And then as you go to 50,000, 100,000 or more, then you need to have more charging beyond my depot. Um, for um, if I do it only 10% of the time, I can eat the costs of doing things at supercharging stations. But ultimately, I would want to have the whole network. And I would think that Pilot and the other existing truck
Yep.
stop companies would then want to make and invest in that network. But it's chicken and the egg. You need to have 10,000, 50,000 trucks first. So you do it with a bunch of regional trucking use cases, which doesn't need a lot of charging network. And then once you say, oh yeah, there's enough trucks here, we will need to have this thing, then they'll build that out. But in terms of getting to 50,000 per year, they, you know, that infrastructure is something that you want to get rolling on quite quickly in the 2 to 3 year time frame. Definitely 2 years. I would think you'd really want, if I've scaled up in 2026, I really want to be cracking and ready to go plan for it in the second half of 2026 once you've shown that you can be making thousands, tens of thousands, and then really crank on infrastructure through 2027 to make this happen. Um, I would think that they would be modifying megapacks to make it easier to dump them in Lego blocks. Like they'll put in more electronics, which I think is going to happen with the version 3 megapack to, Elon talked about having a limitation on transformers, that there's a shortage there. So they're going to build in the equipment to do it themselves so they can then roll that out. But that is going to be a growing the service revenue. of Tesla. So they have a large service revenue now, a lot of supercharging. The mega charging situation will be even more, which will, I think, go into the diner aspect because you can't put the mega charging in the same spot as where the current super truck stops are. You need to like build it parallel. Eventually, you'll convert them, but it's a parallel network initially.
It's
Yeah,
interesting though when you think about it because we won't need those truck stops anymore if you have driverless trucks.
right,
Driverless
right,
trucks don't need the services of food and showers and different things that those truck stops offer. A place to sleep too
right.
is the primary reason.
Yeah,
We just don't need that for Robotrucking, right? It's a much
yeah,
more efficient, streamlined system.
right. But you do need a larger footprint for solar for your
Yes.
charging. So there's
Yeah.
an area that you need to have, and then I think there's still could be some purposes for doing stuff with loads and doing a new warehousing type thing because you have to change that to maybe being bot maybe bot efficient to do that.
Mhm.
So you have to it'll be a different infrastructure, but yes, not human centric. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, isn't it? Because the human-driven trucks, we have a problem with the trucking industry with massive turnover.
Mhm. Yeah.
I understand it's like 40, 50, 60% in many cases,
Mhm.
right? And of course, I think it's a job that probably not a lot of young people want to do.
Mhm.
So from a demographic standpoint, I think it's a challenge. So it's just interesting. This is coming along at probably a really good time
Mhm.
for the industry to solve some of its major challenges,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. But the if you can bring the cost down by a half or a third, if the movement of goods is for the supply chain is basically a tax on everything that we do.
Yeah,
So if we were to massively reduce those costs, it, even while maintaining a large profitability, then I think it will ultimately grow demand and give the overall economies a boost to it'd be like taking a VAT tax from 10% down to 3% or something to to um, to give you an economic accelerator to your whole economy.
yeah, no, definitely would. The
Yeah.
other thing too that was interesting is when you look at the regulations,
Mm,
and this may be different than autonomous vehicles, but according to Aurora, which is an autonomous trucking company, they're saying that 25 states expressly allow deployment of autonomous trucks,
mhm,
and 15 states implicitly allowed driverless deployment of autonomous vehicles. So basically, you've got 40 states that
mhm,
allow it.
mhm,
Um, California at the time, I'm not sure if this has changed, but California at the time, it was expressly prohibited, which
mhm,
is interesting. Testing is permitted in Washington State. Testing is permitted in Ohio, in
mhm,
Maine, Connecticut. And driverless operation is prohibited in New York State, as well as I think New Hampshire and perhaps Massachusetts and some
mhm.
other states in that area. So, but most of the country, from coast to coast, under existing law, allows deployment of autonomous trucks.
Great.
And it's
Mhm.
interesting because I don't know that that matches up entirely with allowing the deployment of autonomous robotaxis.
Right, right.
Seems to be some differences there. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that in detail, but that's
Mhm.
interesting.
Right. And it's a pure economic decision for these robo trucks that
Yeah,
there's no convincing customers to do it, that if you as a provider offer it and then you're able to provide these superior services, and you don't necessarily have to compete on cost. We discussed that, yeah, yesterday. You have to compete on cost. You can compete on speed of delivery
yeah,
and other factors that people would pay a premium for.
sure.
Yeah.
So are you saying, Brian, that we don't have to worry about brand damage anymore?
Yeah, that's right. It's a separate uh, industrial line that's just like
Yeah,
Megapacks. It's like no
right.
brand damage on Megapacks, no brand damage on semi trucks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. It's purely a cost-driven equation, cost and reliability. Obviously, that factors in the cost.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. If you have anything else we discussed, we can do it for another video. Any closing comments?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting as we continue to think this through.
Mm,
It's no doubt very complementary, I think, I mean, obviously it's a logical step for Tesla to move in this direction. I
mm,
think as we look at the numbers, I think probably both of us were a little bit surprised about how large this opportunity really is,
yeah.
just in the US, not to
Mm,
mention globally.
mm,
And also it solves a problem from an economic perspective, but also from an environmental perspective, it's going to be a huge benefit.
mm,
Diesel trucks emit a lot of pollution.
right.
So that's an added benefit there too. So yeah, I think this is really exciting. I'm curious as to what you think in terms of what the timing might be in terms of when Tesla will be able to offer this type of service.
So um, I've started producing pilot production of the semi truck. So they made a bunch before, but now with the new factory in Nevada, that's done. So they did about 21 according to the engineer. So that's about maybe one per day. So then the 50,000 per year would be next year 150 per day. So
Yeah,
getting semi truck production up to um, 5,000 per year at a 15 per year. I expect that to happen by the end of this year. And that should, they should easily have, for their own uses as well as for Pepsi and other clients, they have those all kind of done. And then FSD, if FSD 14 comes out and works, and then I think it will adapt pretty quickly to semi-truck. And they have been testing with the camera and other configurations for semi. And it's only highway driving. Well, you can do predominantly highway driving. You could pick whichever mode you want. If you were doing better at low speeds and felt comfortable at low speeds, 25 miles per hour, then you can do the regional trucking that Pepsi does. And the the nature of the driving is very consistent. So I think it's an easier use case than Robotaxi. That I'm going to the depot, I'm driving in the parking lot, I'm going onto some surface streets, I'm going onto a short segment of highway, and I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just like driving, mostly a straight line.
right.
So I think it's that FSD 14 should be able to handle that quite easily. And if I somehow needed more sensors, the cost model of this, if I need to toss on 40K worth of sensors, I could justify that. And then also a custom, like AI5 or multiple AI4 chips if I needed to do that as well. Um, again, those extra costs would be trivial relative to the opportunity. So it's more about making it work and completely replacing that driver, and then the opportunity unfolds from there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be exciting to see how FSD version 14, whether that is readily adaptable to the truck. I hope that's the case. I hope that it's relatively straightforward.
Mm,
I think it's encouraging, for example, that they got FSD to work on the Cybertruck. It took, almost a year to do that.
mm,
And maybe that process gets easier with the Semi, and
mm,
easier with Robovan and any other form factor that comes out.
mm,
So yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. And I'm not clear yet on when that might be, but I'm hopeful that perhaps in the next couple of years that we see
mm.
that. And that would probably coincide quite nicely with the ramp of the new semi-factory.
Right. Right. Because
Uh,
they won't be able to make 50,000.
no,
I'm not expecting that next year. I would be very happy if they can make 20,000
yeah,
next year and 5,000 this year and then get to 50,000 in 2027. That'd be very good. And then if they're thinking they're going right, then they would start building another factory, um, two factories in Asia and in Europe. That
mhm.
that the opportunity would then become clear that, okay, we're going to scale this thing, just like Megapack getting to three factories as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting when you think about the capacity at 50,000. It's 150 trucks or so per day.
Yeah,
50,000 feels like a small number for just number of vehicles, but
right,
when you think about 150 trucks coming off the line every day,
right.
that's kind of staggering.
Right.
It's kind of exciting. And again, as you mentioned, if they can duplicate that in a couple other places around the world,
Yeah.
this business will have a huge impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And other companies do make a lot of trucks, Freightliner, the Volkswagen or the Volvo Group, whatever. They make 100,000, even 500,000 per year. Like the Chinese makers make
Yeah.
large numbers. Because there are 2 million large trucks sold per year. So, or even higher numbers. It's kind of tough to nail down those particular numbers for some reason. Yeah.
And some data I came across was diesel trucks on average last just under 600,000 miles.
Hmm.
I think it's about 7.5 years
Hmm.
life.
Right.
And the average truck right now in the US is something like under 4 years average age.
Hmm. Okay.
So these things are used and put out of service pretty quickly, right? And
Mhm.
relatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
Um, and of course, a Robotruck with the miles that we're contemplating at driving, they'll need to keep producing a lot of them
Right. Right.
because they'll be burning through some of those trucks pretty quickly.
Right. It is, you're doing a lot of usage to these vehicles. It requires a lot of
Yeah.
replacement and maintenance. Yeah.
But I'd imagine the maintenance cost should be a heck of a lot less because, again, not many moving parts,
Right.
a lot more simple. The unplanned maintenance on trucks is
Mhm.
actually kind of a big burden on these trucking companies,
Yeah.
right?
And also
Because
the key aspect of brakes that with regenerative braking with electric,
yeah,
where it can power up as it's going downhill,
right.
and then not putting the strain onto the truck brakes, because that is a huge problem, which also
Yes.
causes runaway trucks
Yep.
where the brakes fail and then they have to do some runoff zone. Those will make it safer and cheaper.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for motorists to get used to the idea of a truck being just as fast going uphill as it is going downhill.
Right.
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 For years, you can count on, oh, I can pass that truck easily because it's going to be very slow going up the hill. But
Right.
with the Tesla Semi with a full load, it can go up the hill pretty fast.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Fascinating stuff, Brian.
yeah, a lot more to discuss. We have more videos to discuss it because there's all kinds of things with more details around charging, how it plays in with megapacks, how it plays in with Tesla Bot. There's a lot of nuance to it, but it is fundamentally as big in general scale an opportunity as Robotaxi, and in some scenarios it could be bigger, which is something that everyone has been focusing on how big Robotaxi is, that the Robo truck happening at the same time, roughly, is going to be a massive boost to the share price.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then, of course, you add Optimus to the mix, and then Robotaxi and Robotrucking become part of the same platform,
Mhm. Right,
right? A massive logistics network that is, yeah, the potential of that is enormous, absolutely enormous.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me.
Awesome.
And everyone, please like and subscribe. And put in any questions, and we'll try to include them in the next video when we get together. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.